not helpful for the Prime Minister.
We got a little shake-up here in the Liberal caucus. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a panel on CBC talking about Nate Erskine-Smith making his comments on Mark Carney's budget. Very critical comments on Carney's budget. It's interesting to listen to this because the Liberal pundits, one of them just goes off on Nate, but then in general, they try to smooth out the tone here like this is healthy for democracy. Meanwhile, you'll see direct contradiction, more attacks at Pierre Poilievre, his leadership, trying to get him to step down. The media are trying their best to get rid of Pierre. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, some interesting polling data share of Canadians who wear poppy by political affiliation coming from Leger. As you see, 65% Conservative, 60% Liberal, 49% NDP, and 49% Green. But in regards to the situation in Nova Scotia, where the courts won't allow poppies to be worn because they don't want it to be political, there's not much of a difference here. 65 to 60%. It's disgusting and deplorable to interfere with anything that honors our veterans. CBC running a story, Palestinian flag being raised at Toronto City Hall on Remembrance Day. What a disgrace.
The flag of Palestine is set to fly at City Hall for the first time in Toronto's history next week. City staff have approved a request from the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians following Canada.
This is just deplorable stuff. These people didn't fight for our country. It says next week, yes, and the story ran today, November 11th. Yeah, I don't know. The word disgusting is popping up a lot here in the comments. Yeah. We also got this, Chief Judge backs court poppy ban after backlash. That's right, they don't want the poppies in courthouses because they're political somehow. Now, speaking of political, we're jumping over to CBC here. They're talking about Nate Erskine-Smith, his comments on Mark Carney's budget. Basically, he ripped into it pretty good. For a backbencher, a guy who's likely looking to become the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. He's looking for his opportunity. He's taking it at the worst possible time. And this panel discussion tells us a lot.
Mark Carney was out promoting the budget today, outlining his plan to make Canada its own best customer through a Buy Canadian policy, an effort meant to make Canada less reliant on the U.S. and to prop up Canadian businesses during the trade war. But as the Prime Minister sells the budget, one of his own MPs is pointing out some of its flaws.
First, stalled climate action, cutting tree planting, moving away from an emissions cap, winding down greener homes. No new money for climate action. On housing, it falls short of these specific promises in our platform, and it unfortunately falls well short of the wartime effort that many of us thought we'd deliver. The budget adds $140 billion in new spending over 5
years. It makes it look especially worse because they're editing it down so much here. It's compressing it, and you're just getting dished a whole bunch of information at once.
$90 billion net after savings, and only 36% of the net new spending is capital. My kids shouldn't pay for today's military or for me to save $400 of income taxes. We see the budget commit to a new inefficient fossil fuel subsidy for LNG facilities. We do not need more public dollars chasing fossil fuels. Worse, we see major cuts of over $2.5 billion over 4 years to international development assistance. Overall, the budget meets the moment in part, but fairly, it does not live up to its promise of generational investments.
I'm pretty sure Nate Erskine-Smith is a Liberal member of Parliament. I may need to double check, but what do you make of that messaging coming from the caucus?
Yeah, and I would say there are elements of this video in full where he also compliments the budget, so if people want to check it out. And I'll give two perspectives. One, in my old job, when I was in Prime Minister's office, I did hate this. You know, I wanted people to say one message. But having from the outside, I would say it's actually really important, especially as you alluded to, the current makeup of the Conservative caucus, that while he has criticisms that I think are fairly fair on the budget, I think it's important that in one caucus, you could have someone having criticisms and have a robust discussion on the budget. He is
That's right, robust discussion. If this were the Conservatives, they would be running wild with this, buck wild. Like, oh my God, they're revolting. How could they do that? This is such an awful thing. The Conservatives are done. But if the Liberals do it, it's robust talk. Now, not all the pundits here feel the same way.
He says positive things about the budget as well, but I think that's actually healthy for democracy. If you are too hyper-partisan and people are just become clapping seals behind the Prime Minister, that's not credible for Canadians. So I think for Canadians,
Yeah, but that's what we have here. That is the Liberal Party. The only reason he's doing this is because he wants that leadership job for the Ontario Liberals.
So if anybody wants to know why Nate Erskine-Smith is not in cabinet, this would be an example of that.
The reason why he's doing this is because Carney removed him from cabinet. After years of sitting in the backbenches, Trudeau brought him in December 20th. He had like 2 months of tasting what it's like and that pay increase, and then Carney replaced him with Gregor Robertson. Now he's sticking it to Carney here.
On his point about how, it's a democracy and all that good stuff. 100%. And yes, he's outlining criticisms from each of the three opposition parties that you've outlined. Being in caucus and being in government is also a team sport. And right now, the Prime Minister, for Liberal MPs, their job is not to highlight to highlight the inadequacies. It's to promote the aspects that the Prime Minister wants. The opposition's job is to highlight that which is in there. So, I'm all in favor of having MPs stand up for their constituents. There was nothing about his particular riding that he really spoke to. He spoke of general Canadian ones. Not helpful for the Prime Minister or the sales job that the cabinet has on this. And team players, unfortunately, those that rogue individual MPs don't get a lot of sway within caucus because they can't be counted on to pull together as a team.
Well, Kate, Brad is right. Politics is theoretically a team sport. Maybe if you want to run for Ontario Liberal leader, you might do things to carve out your own brand. But this is still a Liberal member of Parliament criticizing the Liberal government.
Which is something we rarely see, but there's something in it for him. Meanwhile, what are we seeing from the media today? Well, we got Robin Urbeck here, Globe and Mail columnist, posting this: can the Conservatives caucus please eat a Snickers bar? She writes a whole piece here, basically breaking down the Chris D'Entremont situation. There's never a critical piece that comes out against the Liberals. Is she going to write one on Nate Erskine-Smith? Are the Conservatives okay? Do they need a Snickers bar, a hug? Days after D'Entremont crossed the floor, Alberta MP Matt Genereux, who was rumored to be crossing the floor as well, announced his resignation from Parliament. The Conservatives can be angry and smart about their smirking caucus, or they can just be angry. They can knock down doors and brand their former colleague a liar, feeding into a worse perceptions that some Canadians have about their party. Listen to this garbage, just unfounded garbage. Meanwhile, what does the data actually show? Net impressions of O'Toole, Scheer, and Poilievre. And as we see here, so election happens, election, and what has happened? Scheer dropped off a cliff, O'Toole dropped off a cliff, Pierre Poilievre did not drop off the cliff. The only little down spurt we're seeing here is because the media is attacking Pierre for 2 weeks straight now. The support is still there. It's strong. This is what the Liberals don't like. They don't like that Pierre is keeping his support among the Conservatives. So they're running all sorts of stuff. Now we have these polls coming out. 40% of those on the right believe it's best to choose a new leader for the Conservative Party. Oh, really? This is coming from Bruce Anderson, a Liberal pollster who runs Spark Advocacy. Feelings about Carney, 37% positive. Feelings about Poilievre, 28% positive, 28% negative. Who is he polling here? They're running this here. Would it be best for Conservatives to look for a new leader? 64% saying yes. Well, that's got everyone. NDP, Liberals, all of them. Now, if you look CPC, 67%. Once again, though, this polling data, who are they polling? Are they calling people in Toronto? Are they getting more red Tories? That's the problem when you have polling data like this that comes from a Liberal. Bruce Anderson is a Liberal. As we see here, Anderson Brothers invest in National News Watch after 7 years of running popular news aggregate. National News Watch founder Will Leroy is expanding it with new investment from political brothers Bruce, Rick, and Jim Anderson. So Bruce Anderson here is a co-owner of this website, National News Watch, and he runs Spark Advocacy, which you can see here, Bruce Anderson. And Bruce Anderson, it's been open. He's actually getting called out on Twitter for this. And he says, I was open about it, that I've campaigned for the Liberal Party, for Carney, for Chrétien. As you can see here, Conservative Cole Hogan saying, hey, Bruce, I'd like to respectfully ask if you had any role in Mark Carney's Liberal leadership campaign or the Liberal Party general election earlier this year. If so, I would humbly suggest that you disclose that when publishing items like this. And the response here, honestly, I thought people who follow my content have heard that multiple times. I have always disclosed my work for parties and politicians, from Mulroney to Martin, Charest, Clark, Carney. It would be hard to make a case that I've hidden that. But if you look for it, it's not very easily disclosed. Just another Liberal pollster. But you don't see any of them picking up this story about Nate Erskine-Smith.
Yeah, geez, Nate, could you not have released that video any earlier just to take some of the heat off of the blue team and just people that were dissatisfied with the approach of their caucus? Yeah. No, I think that Brad is quite right. It is a team sport, and I'll just use a corporate analogy here. There's often a lot of debate and discussion amongst the senior management team before a decision is made and taken by the CEO. that is the opportunity if you are a member of the government to raise your concerns. This is not the first time that he has, stepped out of line with the party line and the caucus line. But at the same time, you show that you are a part of the team by supporting the leader and supporting the decisions that are taken.
I mean, what we've got here is the same thing as Chris D'Entremont. D'Entremont was deputy speaker. He had to run again. He didn't win. He was pissed off about it, and he took it out on the party by crossing the floor. Nate Erskine-Smith was made a minister very briefly by Trudeau, who's trying to shuffle the cabinet, hoping to stay on. It didn't work. Carney tosses him to the back benches, brings in Gregor Robertson. He's pissed off, has a vendetta, and that's how he's taking it out on Carney. And while they are addressing this on CBC because they have to, so they're trying to run damage control here, saying, oh, it's healthy for democracy. If this was a conservative story, they would just be jumping all over this like this is the end of the Conservative Party. It's the end of Pierre. It's horrible leadership. There's no talk of Carney's leadership being a bad leader. He can't corral his caucus. There's none of that. They would be going after Pierre for all of that if this situation was reversed. Now, the attacks on Pierre are non-stop. We've got this one from Tri-County Vanguard. Chris D'Entremont self-described red Tory joins Liberals because he had enough of the negativity. It's just news article after news article, posting garbage that isn't founded. Bring out some videos, shows the security camera of what really happened in Parliament. I'm sure they've got security cameras in there, but that's not what's happening. And just think the CBC's been running rumors for the past week or two when this situation with Nate Erskine-Smith is an actual video he posted, words coming out of his mouth. There's no video, there's no audio coming out of Conservatives saying bad things about Pierre, aside from Chris D'Entremont, but I mean, he crossed the floor. All the other stuff is just rumors.
But he certainly has made his opinions known now. Is this damaging for them at all?
As a scribbler and a babbler who has complained about backbench MPs being reduced to the role of trained seals balancing a ball on their nose and barking their approval whenever required as a backdrop, we've got to find it refreshing. We do, because
when people speak honestly, it's always better.
That's right. And so if you have good relationships with backbench MPs on both
it's just so rich hearing David Cochrane talk about speaking honestly. Give me a break.
Sides of the aisle, this is the kind of thing that you hear. And actually, I thought it was fairly solid analysis, and I say that as someone who risks getting bounced out of the studio and replaced by Nate Erskine-Smith in the power panel.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I can't believe he just said that. You see Cochrane nervously laughing there. This guy just called out the CBC and David Cochrane to his face being a biased news organization. That's what he just basically said there. He's going to get bounced out of the studio.
Actually, I thought it was fairly solid analysis, and I say that as someone who risks getting bounced out of the studio and replaced by Nate Erskine-Smith in the power panel.
Getting bounced out of the studio, yeah. If you don't say nice things to the Liberals, you're going to get bounced out. That's what he just said. Solid analysis. And that's what I mentioned in my previous video. Nate's analysis on Carney's budget was on point. It sounds like it would be coming from the Conservatives. At least some aspects of it. Obviously, him talking about foreign aid is ridiculous, but I mean, you got to wonder if Rob Russo is going to be invited back to the CBC.
Yeah, well, I mean, Vandana, it also, I think, in some way.
You see this? He pivoted right away, didn't even address that. Vanda, let's talk to you now. We don't want to talk to Rob anymore.
Shows the transition in policy and focus the party is going through right now, does it not?
Yeah, we'll quickly pivot here. We don't want to talk to Rob anymore.
Things Nate Erskine-Smith was talking about there, obviously they're very core to the type of liberal he is, right? The generational fairness, climate action, and aggressiveness on housing. Not saying those don't apply to Prime Minister Carney, but they're not the way they were under, say, Justin Trudeau, at least as a leading item.
Yeah, I mean, every iteration of a budget is different, and a budget won't be everything to everybody, right? So you'll make certain decisions. As someone who's once signed off on budget decisions, there's always something more you can add. There's always something, a new program that could be added or a new way of looking at things.
You can just add more. We'll add Nate's stuff next time. Don't worry, this is not a major meltdown. Carney's totally fine here. What's not really being talked about is stuff like this. Fresnillo enters Canada with $550 million probe gold acquisition. That's right, another Canadian mine is being sold to a Mexican company, Fresnillo, acquiring Canada's probe gold. More Canadian companies are being sold, and big mining companies. Carney's budget and his whole plan here, generational investment, critical minerals, mining, all this stuff. When we're seeing companies leaving Canada, being sold, going to America, we're seeing this onslaught of attack coming at Pierre Poilievre, and this has been going on for 2 weeks now. Sometimes these companies go too far, and that's what happened with Donald Trump here, threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion for chopping up his video like CTV did to Pierre Poilievre last year.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon
Director General and the CEO.
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies, you know.
Yeah, so the CEO resigned because of this. Look at this nonsense.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
For the BBC cut, they took footage from an hour later and spliced it in to make it seem like this insurrection was being planned by Donald Trump, when really that's not what happened. This is the power media has. We got Pierre being attacked on all fronts here, and what do we have? Look at this graph here. This goes all the way back to Justin Trudeau coming in 2015, his popularity 70%, and then starts to just tank and tank and tank and tank and tank. It hits the absolute bottom of the floor here. Justin Trudeau really never went up in power from the day he got in to the day he went out. Trudeau steps down, the Liberal Party goes up in favorability here. Carney becomes prime minister around here sometime. His popularity peaks, about 57, 58, and now it's been going back down. Now look at Pierre Poilievre's support. It's almost flat. He hasn't been losing support. This is what the Liberals are terrified about. Because look, he's still pulling 55, 56, and right now it's 53 because of the 2 weeks of onslaught attack that's moving swing voters around. Now they're having to address this. The swing voters in Canada are going to figure out what's going on here sooner or later.
Well, I think that's a good thing for Canadian politics, right? That you can have disagreement and move from the orthodoxy within reasonable levels of criticism, you know, in terms of the conversation and the debate. I mean,
listen to this, just trying to justify Nate Erskine-Smith criticizing Carney. If this were someone criticizing Pierre Poilievre, they would just be running this like the party's breaking apart, that Poilievre is done. There's no talk of Carney being done. It's so biased on here.
Nate Erskine-Smith is still voting for this budget. He's still supporting it. But I can see when question period comes back and the vote happens on the 17th, the Conservatives quoting him back to his boss, you know, in their critique of the spending plan.
I think it's fine to have, of course it's fine to have differences within caucus or within cabinet. But, you know, once those are aired, there has to be one face of the government or of a budget. Doesn't matter what stripe this is. If you know, all you're doing is enabling the opposition to further harm and further distract from your chief spokesperson's message, whether it's a prime minister.
This is rich. Wow, to distract when they've spent 2 weeks attacking Pierre instead of talking about the budget.
Premier, this, you know, would say this at the provincial level as well. You can't sign up and say, I would like all of the spoils of running under this team, but then whenever I want to, I can step outside for reasons I still don't see what the benefit that he gets by doing this. I only see harm to his team and to his boss. And aiding and abetting the opposition and critics. I don't see how this advances any of those. What he should have been doing is advocating for those before the budget was finalized. I didn't hear him advocating for more international aid or any of the other things that he talked about prior to the budget. Now that it's done, you know, he's now criticizing those cuts.
There's really two things at play. The first one is Nathaniel Erskine-Smith's own ambitions. And, you know, he's been pretty clear that he's at least kicking the tires at perhaps another run at the Ontario Liberal Party. And they really are poised to make gains at the expense of the NDP. So it's not strange, I think, that he would be flexing some of his progressive bona fides as that party goes through a leadership review in a race at the Ontario provincial level. But the other piece of this, of course, is that Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is part of the team. You know, he has a misalignment, I think, right now that a lot of progressives may be feeling in the party. We just talked about, you know, do red Tories have a home in the Conservative Party? I think there might be a lot of progressive liberals, I'll call them terracotta liberals, people that might go orange and red. Where do they fit into the Carney government and to the objectives that are being put forward there? So Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is not the only person that that may fall into that camp that's in caucus or even necessarily cabinet. And certainly, to Vandana's point, a lot of the younger people that support the Liberal Party. So I think that might be something that the Carney government may continue to grapple with. You see them trying to kind of have it both ways on environmental policy, for example. but we may see more Nathaniel Erskine Smiths in terms of discontent with moving away from some more of those progressive policy banners that were carried by the previous Trudeau administration.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she's bang on here. So Carney's basically getting rid of any of the real green initiatives like planting trees because he doesn't care about that because it doesn't help his stock values or his holdings in Brookfield. But he's doing everything eco-green that boosts his own share values. Carney's showing his true colors here. It's all about Brookfield. It's the Brookfield party.